It's now 4 o'clock. We'll commence the Hobart Workshop for this afternoon. I'd like to advise all present that an audio recording is being made of this meeting. All people attending the meeting are to be respectful and considerate towards other people attending the meeting. Language and conduct at the meeting that could be perceived as offensive, defamatory or threatening to a person attending the meeting or listening to the recording is not acceptable. For the purposes of the recording, elected members should wait for me to announce them before speaking. And can all mobile phones please be switched off or put to silent? Thank you. I'd like to note that we have in attendance this afternoon Councillor Posselt, Councillor Harvey, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Alderman Duco and the Deputy Lord Mayor Linda Sherlock. We've got a few apologies this evening. Apologies from the Lord Mayor and a leave of absence for Councillor Dutta. In recognition of the deep history and culture of this place, I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which the City of Hobart was built. I acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa people of Tasmania who have survived invasion and dispossession and continue to maintain their identity, culture and their rights. I recognise the value of continuing Aboriginal knowledge and cultural practice and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Can I have an elected member move the confirmation of minutes of the last meeting? Councillor Harvey. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. There are no supplementary items this evening to consider.
No, Chair.
Any conflicts of interest around the table? There being none, I'll move to transfer of agenda items tonight. Is there any proposed agenda items to be transferred? There's no transfer of agenda items tonight, so we'll move on to 6 on the agenda, which is the reports. Road naming for 512 Nelson Road, the subdivision on Mount Nelson.
That's a recommendation, Chair.
That's moved by Councillor Posselt. All those in favour?
Aye.
That's carried unanimously. Any discussion?
Other way around.
You've got to go.
Yeah, discussion and move.
You close the discussion.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go back to discussion. There better be some discussion now.
I've got some discussion.
Great, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Excellent. Noted. Anyone else? Discussion noted. All right, if there's no other input, then I will declare that motion carried. So we'll move on to our items for workshopping tonight. Just for everyone in the room, items for workshopping do not have a decision which needs to be made. And we're moving on to 7.1, which is a presentation about the Royal Hobart Hospital project update. Thank you.
Thank you, elected members. I have two colleagues here representing the Royal Hobart Hospital, who are going to provide us with an update on the works that are about to get underway, with a focus including on Argyle Street transport movements. Without further ado, I'll hand you over to Simon Dunn, who's with the
Thank you.
state.
Good afternoon all. Yes, Simon Dunn, I'm the Director of Programming and Delivery under Infrastructure Services for the Department of Health, and I've got my Senior Project Manager, Michael Pears, also here, who's part of the Royal ED. So, you've just got some slides.
I'll click on.
Excellent, thank you very much. Introductions. So just before I pass over to Michael, just to focus on the Royal Emergency Department expansion, I just wanted to quickly highlight just some of the other related key projects as part of our redevelopment program for the Royal. I'll skip through the completed ones, but just in focus. Thank you. Just the in progress and planning ones. So the Emergency Department expansion phase 2, which we'll touch on today. The A block redevelopment, that one is currently on hold. It has been developed up to tender ready status, and that one is dependent on funding. The A block lift replacement, which falls as part of that redevelopment, is currently due to be completed by the end of this year. The second cardiac catheterisation lab, we're close to getting a contract to commence works early next month. with a completion next year. And then the relocation of the paediatric outpatient was for late 27 for a tender, early 28 for construction with completion in 2029. And then other related projects there, we had the Public Diagnostic Breast Care Centre, which was completed in May, and we're currently in construction with the pharmacy redevelopment due end of this year. I'll pass over to you now, Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, so a bit of an update or summary of the emergency department expansion. So, same as Simon, I'll skip over the completed phases. So phase 1 and phase 2 of transition works are complete. We're now into the phase 2 main works at the moment, which will deliver a total of 120 treatment points and points of care, and new and improved health services outlined on the upcoming slides. I've got a list of project objectives there that are included in the slide pack. In the interest of time, I won't run through them sort of one by one, and then new and improved health services on the next slide, which is resulting based on those project objectives. Just a layout for reference and discussion as I quickly run through the outline of the project. So I'm sure you all know the hospital quite well, but Liverpool Street at the bottom of the page, emergency department is currently on lower ground on Liverpool Street there, and Argyle Street, we've currently got our construction zone adjacent between H Block and Argyle Street. Currently, you would notice there's a construction zone on Argyle Street between Collins and Liverpool. This is a pretty high-level picture of what we're up to down there, essentially creating public drop-off and ambulance zone to temporarily move the emergency department from Liverpool Street to Argyle Street. That would then result in us doing the full refurbishment of the current ED, which I just mentioned here, down on lower ground on Liverpool Street. And that's just a very high-level picture of exactly what it's going to look like. So an expanded down towards H Block and a full refit of that whole area, but no sort of change to how you access the ED once it does move back to Liverpool Street. Directly above that, creating a paediatrics ED in what's known as the horseshoe or the forecourt around that drop-off zone on Liverpool Street at the main entrance, which would be make it separated from the main ED itself for the peds. And in conjunction with that, creating a fast track ED up on level 3 of J Block, and then that's shown in yellow there with Liverpool Street at the bottom of the page, and in orange a mental health short stay unit at the back of D Block there. Probably the interesting parts for sort of this forum, so your current project impacts. This map is currently shown on the project website, which we've got a link to at the back of the slide pack, and goes with all the public comms that goes out. But just running through that very briefly, you'll notice, as I mentioned, a construction zone on Argyle Street to create that ambulance zone, which is at the moment resulting in a footpath closure between Hobart Private Hospital and Liverpool Street. And then on Liverpool Street, we've got the bike lane currently closed as well, and then the lanes narrowed there to create a construction and loading zone across Liverpool Street. And then future project impacts, so essentially this map is similar, but will show when we do move ED to Argyle Street later this year, the impacts will be to the sort of road network then. So Argyle Street will have the right-hand lane closed, and that will be an ambulance-only lane to allow ambulances to access the new ED and ambulance zone on Argyle Street there. You can see the new temporary emergency department is clearly depicted on Argyle Street there, with a public drop-off zone and a no left turn from Argyle Street into Liverpool Street, which was, I believe, recommended by council early in the project to prevent backup of traffic out of the Argyle Street car park whilst ED is on Argyle Street. Retaining the bike lane closure on Liverpool Street and showing no access down to the current existing ED ramp on Liverpool Street as well. A few notes on consultation with the City of Hobart. So we've been through the development application process via 2 DAs, one for the Argyle Street works and one for main works. We've now received approval for all of our building and plumbing permits, and I meet fortnightly with City of Hobart's senior roads and traffic engineer just to give regular updates, especially with the impact the project is having on Argyle Street and Liverpool Street especially. Regarding public communication, so we've got, as I mentioned, that dedicated page on the Department of Health website. Before ED moves, 2 weeks before, we'll be doing a print, digital, social media, radio advertising to broadly raise awareness of the move and the timing, and we'll update that 3 days prior. And then from the day of the move for the following 2 weeks, we'll update that comms again to reinforce that new emergency department entrance location. And we will be updating roadside signage for vehicles and pedestrians whilst engaging directly with neighbours and providing that supporting information within the hospital as well. There's a nice render of the new waiting room in the emergency department, and a good time for any questions.
Great, thanks very much. I'll open the floor to questions.
Thanks, Chair. Could you go back to that?
Councillor Harvey.
That's right. Could you just go back to that map of the road network? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's through you, Chair. The question, that no left turn arrow, was that a turn arrow?
It's no left turn.
No left turn into Liverpool.
Yep.
So is that a permanent no left turn?
No, so for the 12 to 13 months that ED is located on Argyle Street,
Yep.
when they move back to Liverpool Street, the right lane of Argyle Street will open back up and then back to normal.
Okay, because I'm just thinking that's not a bad time to give it a trial to see whether we need that left turn. Do we need that left turn or not? Because it there's correct congestion coming out of Argyle Street car park.
Director, would you like to answer that?
I'd actually like to pass to Mr Vidal on that question.
Mr Vidal.
Thank you, Councillor. That's a good question. Yeah, so the modelling that we've done, so it's in partnership with the Department of State Growth, obviously the hospital, when they came to us, we did have a lot of concerns with obviously the impacts on the car park and onto Macquarie and Davies Street from the department. So we modelled and sort of tried to understand what the impacts would be. And clearly there'd be significant impacts going from 3 lanes to 2. So part of the recommendation, yeah, was to continue the flow from that left lane rather than sort of stopping behind vehicles. Because as you bank up into Liverpool Street, it can often be a spot where you stop or slow. So to keep the cars flowing out of both our car park and off to protect Macquarie and Davies Streets, it was recommended to have that closure. As far as sort of ongoing, sort of whether that becomes an ongoing, we'll obviously sort of have a look and see how it's impacting on traffic flow, but clearly we're trying to mitigate the impacts of the construction, and that's first and foremost for this closure.
Yeah, no, this might be that opportunity to see whether or not that's an essential turn or not. If people are complaining if they need to turn left.
I should add it will be, the plan is 7 to 7, so it'll be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. ban, and it will also exclude buses and taxis. They'll continue to be able to turn left at that location.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Vidal. Alderman Zuko.
Unless I missed it, what's the time? 13, you just said it then, 13 to...
For the ED to be located on Argyle Street, yeah, but more, 2 years for the project.
2 years for the project, so, okay,
Yeah.
well, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Fossard.
Yeah, a couple of things. I guess I'm not a big fan of the 7 till 7. I think that time, putting in time constraints we see on our clearways, that there's not very many moves around Hobart that people actually follow. I think that if you make it left turn after 7, people will turn throughout the day. So I would favour just, if you're going to ban the left turn except taxis and buses, ban the left turn all day. In response to you guys, because I know that you're attached to probably a larger budget than we have, is there any possibility, it makes a lot of sense if as a result of this that we're going to be feeding more traffic up to Bathurst Street, because they're not going to be turning left now as a result of the works. Is there scope for you to talk to DSG and to work with our team about making the front of the hospital 2-way temporarily for that time frame to get that traffic straight down Liverpool Street and down Campbell Street and out, rather than funneling everything to one already busy street?
I think that's probably something we just have to take on notice.
Yeah, of course,
but
yeah.
definitely happy to consider that.
Yeah, because there might be some capital expenditure involved with the signals, which we don't run, just miscellaneous. And so it would need to be a partnership to make sure we got that right. But the idea of, I think that we need to get proper modelling and maybe look at the two models of allowing right-hand turn to Liverpool Street and the current proposed model, because we may well drive major congestion on Campbell Street in particular, but also Bathurst Street in peak if we leave it like this. So anything you guys can do to help would be great in terms of funding, but otherwise it looks like a exciting, if not protracted project.
Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation.
Alderman Bloomfield.
I probably would prefer that we keep things a little bit more simple, because changes impact people who probably aren't thinking at their best if they're dealing with the Royal in the first place. And secondly, every time we install a change, just like we've already described, with intermittent change during a day, change where we change from dual lane, as in two ways to one way and then back again, I think might actually be problematic, because back in the day when we did change from one way to two way, because I was around in the city when it was both directions, it caused an almighty furore to change the way we negotiate our city. So to change that now and then change it back in 2 years probably be not really something we want to do. I also feel that not just the modelling but also potential for additional accidents might actually be a real significant problem. The other thing is too that we do have a lot of places, I'm thinking immediately of the mall over in Eastern Shore, where after hours you can drive across the mall, and during business time you don't, and I don't see the public having a significant issue with that either. So I do tend to feel that the modelling supplied already by council would be the most appropriate. Thank you.
Alderman Zuko? No question? Just waving your pen around?
I asked my question,
I read that pen as a
I wait for the thing.
No problem. Anyone else? I had a question. I was interested in the patients that might be approaching after hours under stress to the emergency department that are coming down Campbell Street. Will there be signage at that end before you turn onto Liverpool to let you know that that's not the ideal way to be going before you find yourself doing a few blockies?
Yeah, so it's all been redesigned as a precinct-wide signage strategy. Yeah.
Okay, great.
For both the temporary ND and then permanent as well when it goes back to its original location.
Great. And the bike lane closure, were any alternatives suggested to be able to keep a separated cycleway during this process?
I believe it was reviewed, but it was deemed as probably not the space, being the amount of width we needed for that construction loading zone.
And that's 13 months that you anticipate that will be closed?
No, that's for the project duration.
So for 2 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? Councillor Harvey.
Just wondering, just for those who can still do it, any bike parking in the emergency area if they can manage it?
There's a bike storage zone in the Liverpool Street forecourt, which is getting upgraded as part of the project and expanded.
And is that for public or for the staff?
Staff.
Yeah. What sort of capacity will they have?
I'd have to take that on notice. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Sorry, just to confirm what Alderman Zuko was saying, it's 2 years for this portion of the project?
For the complete project, yes.
Yeah. The ED upgrade?
ED expansion, yes.
2 years.
Any other questions or comments? Great. Thanks very much for your presentation today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the Central Hobart Planning Scheme Amendments Update, and we have 3 deputations that have been tabled for this evening. So I'll just let you know the order that you'll be appearing tonight. So we've got Bruce McIntosh and then Errol Stewart, followed by Adrian Brown. So when your name is called, you can come up to the table. You've got 3 minutes, and 30 seconds before your time is up, you'll hear a bell. And then if you could move back to the gallery to allow the next deputation to step up, that would be fantastic. So we'll kick off with Bruce. Thanks very much, Bruce.
Thank
Just
you.
get started when you're ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's not ideal to condense 100 years of industry presence in the Hobart CBD into 3 minutes, but I'll have a go. So to support this workshop, Industry's prepared an independent assessment of primary data, including detailed surveys from 4 dealer groups, a 5th public council submission. All employment, apprentice, servicing and community figures are directly reported by these businesses involved in the survey. Okay, so the CBD precinct holds currently about 100 automotive businesses, including franchise outlets representing over 40 separate vehicle brands. Dealerships are the anchor, displacing them and the independent retail repairers, parts suppliers, body shops, tyre dealers and rental car outlets that support the downstream consumer demand will be forced to reconsider their positions as well. 5 major dealer groups in the CBD precinct currently employ 554 people, with 53 apprentices currently enrolled in training at TASTAFE. Technicians and mechanics are the largest workforce group. This is a skills trade employer base, not a row of showrooms. 3 dealers alone report combined turnover above $336 million. A $21.8 million wage bill and more than $1.8 million a year in council rates and property taxes. In recent years, these 3 dealers have invested over $20 million in their sites, and 1 dealer is in the process of a $30 million upgrade, which is now paused by planning uncertainty. And a 4th operator recently committed $31 million to the purchase of a CBD site under the existing rules. The 5 dealer groups service a combined 92,800 vehicles a year, with more than 1,800 customer visits a week. Customers come from every suburb, and surveys estimate approximately 80% of one group's customer travel from outside the City of Hobart to have their vehicle serviced while they're at work. One operator's analyst shows relocation to a fringe site would more than double its staff's average commute, adding around about $245,000 a year in employee fuel costs. The same time and travel cost lands on every household that services a car within the city. 4 dealers give $960,000 a year in cash and in-kind support to Hobart schools, clubs, charities, including the Cancer Council and the Tasmanian Institute of Sport. Industry's ask is, this is not an argument against housing. Displacing the precinct would not by itself create a single home. Council should set the motion aside, make decisions based on full evidence and work with industry to retain and renew the precinct.
Thank you, Bruce. That's time. Appreciate your input. Errol Stewart.
Can you ask questions?
No, it's deputation.
Yeah, we can ask.
Excuse me, you can't ask questions. I've been briefed by the CEO. There's no questions in deputation time. Thank you, Errol.
Good afternoon. If I could simply start by, so my name's Errol Stewart. You know, we've got a number of car operations across Tasmania, but we also do redevelop sites specifically for residential. At the minute, we've got 55 residential apartments in the system. And if I could probably just speak to the council workshop briefing note, which was provided to us, that Ryan Posselt provided. There are a lot of analogies in that paper that are just clearly incorrect. And the biggest one is that the automotive business in the City of Hobart engages probably 1,000 people. If you look at all of the subsidiary things that are supplied in small automotive workshops, the repcos, and if you moved us all out to Cambridge or Baghdad or Cornwalkie or wherever it might be, all of those people are going to move out and your CBD will just completely starve. So it would be a really bad outcome to just try to move us all out of town, essentially what this amendment proposed initially. Now certainly it appears to be backing away a bit from that at the minute. But to give you an idea, we, for every car that's sold, and there's 10,000 cars sold in Hobart every year, new cars, and probably something similar in used cars, and about 10 times that in terms of what you've got to do to service a car. So in our case, we sell about 8,000 cars a year, and we service 80,000 across the state, and about 40% of that's in Hobart. And the people that come into our city store generally drive into the store, leave their car in our store in Campbell Street and walk to work. Sometimes we'll drive into work. Now that just doesn't happen in our dealership, it happens in the Toyota dealership, it happens in every other dealership in the CBD. And if you kick us all out, what you're going to do, you're going to get every person that wants to service their car to drive from here to Cambridge and back, and then get Repco to drive a part from here to the city out to our store to fit it if we don't have it in stock. So the amount of traffic that would create will be 10 times for what happens now. And this paper that Ryan put together says completely the opposite. The only way we're going to be able to get some affordable housing going in Hobart, in my view, is to get a lower land base, and that's probably not going to happen unless some of the owners decide to sell their cars, sell their land at a lesser figure. We can get some residential going in Hobart, in the CBD, but it's going to have to be sold to the higher market, not to the lower market. So it's a really conundrum, but post-COVID, unfortunately, construction costs have jumped much higher and much quicker than the market's gone with it. So that's the conundrum we face. But getting rid of car dealers is not going to create one more apartment building, in my view.
Thank you, Deputation. Adrian Brown. Up here, please. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I just wanted to speak as a landowner. I'm not a car dealer in Hobart, a franchise car dealer, but I am a landowner who has a car dealer as a tenancy. And I'm very proud of that tenancy, I have to say, because they're innovative, they're progressive, they're at the forefront of industry. And that industry is transitioning at a rapid rate, particularly under the new vehicle emission scheme, which is headed towards a net zero program. So it's really exciting what they're actually doing and what they're planning to do inside that building. But I've got a bigger question that I really want to ask Council. It was earlier this year where it was disclosed through the media that there were 900 approvals. Council's doing its job, right? Like Council's really doing its job. It's doing the heavy lifting to get homes built. 900 approvals already through the system, which is fantastic. The challenge isn't an approval problem. The challenge is a delivery problem. And I think that when we talk about prohibiting a lawful business or lawful industry that's operated successfully in concert with Hobart as it's grown over the last 100 years of operation in support of each other. And we're talking about prohibiting it from operating, and not just the businesses, but you're talking about the people, the employees, everybody who's connected with it. In a cost of living crisis, you're asking people to leave our beautiful city that we've grown so handsomely together. I'm a bit confused about that. I really am. I'm really confused about it. We don't have a land problem in Hobart. We've got a delivery problem in Hobart. And I think that if we all work together in collaboration, part of the core centrepiece of the Hobart City Plan is collaboration. Nowhere in those documents, I've researched them, it says the word prohibition. Nowhere. It says collaboration. And if we get together with the likes of Mr. Stewart and other landowners and businesses, there could be a great pathway for us to achieve what everyone's looking for, a vibrant city, a connected city, in real time. Because I can tell you that 900 homes that are already approved, 900 homes, it's 25% of the 2050 ambition already sitting there in your approval bank. But it's not getting done. So please, what I'm asking for is that we move away from this prohibition motion and we move to a collaboration motion, a motion that gets the key stakeholders together, that helps us overcome the challenges that we're all facing to get to the Hobart City Plan. That's what I'm asking for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate you. Thank you.
That concludes our deputation for this afternoon. Over to you, Director.
Thank you. If I could welcome Jen and Emma Riley to the table, please. Everybody is very familiar with Jen being here, and I think most of you can probably recall Emma's from Planning Committee last week. So just to reintroduce Emma, she's a Director at ERA Advisory. She's also the National President of the Planning Institute of Australia. So extremely experienced. Emma's role here has been to peer review some of the work that Jen and her team have been doing. And Emma's come up with some very clever suggestions about the way we move forward. So just to clarify, we are here tonight to give you a general update on the Central Hobart Plan, our proposed next steps, and to get some feedback from you about a couple of key directions. We are covering off on the car yard non, which was specifically brought back to workshop, and we're also looking at there was a call for a further report on increased density to allow for affordable housing, so we'll cover that one off as well. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Jen, who has a presentation, and Emma's going to speak to some of the key issues as well.
Great, thank you.
All right, so I think Karen sort of covered the purpose of the workshop quite well. I might just get into it. I just wanted to make sure before we go into the more complex part of the discussion, just why we've gone with a particular purpose zone. So PPZ is particular purpose zone. After many years of reviewing the Central Hobart Plan, and obviously in light of everything that's happened post-COVID, preparing the planning scheme amendment, there was a multitude of ways we could have approached this. However, we think in line with other capital cities, it sends a very strong and clear message to everyone, and that we need a capital city zone. The zones themselves, as they are set up in the planning scheme, aren't really tailored to a capital city, and most of the other capital cities do take this approach. What you'll start to see, we'll do a further workshop in the months to come to talk you through all the various details of the particular purpose zone. Just one of the key features to talk you through is that residential areas and those community purpose areas are not included in the PPZ. The hospital as well is not included because that has its own. Is it a?
Yeah,
It's a PPZ. It has its own PPZ for a myriad of reasons, mostly to do with its operations. So as the weeks have been, in the last few weeks, we've started preparing all the various maps that would be accompanying the PPZ. So there's a fair amount of work that we've been sort of working through. The precincts themselves, we are also in the process of formalising these and setting up definitions and objectives for each precinct. And we've also been working out which uses will be prohibited or permissible in each of these different precincts. And so we'll talk you through that at a further workshop as well. So just to summarise why we have gone with the PPZ, it's to replace the fragmented controls. So at the moment we've got quite a few different zones. We've got SAPs overlaying it. We've also got submods in effect at the moment. So this, by having just the one zone for the city, it will just make things a lot easier for everyone. We're also making sure that the built form controls are very simple to understand, and we're looking at making sure we have a very clear, acceptable solution for most of the controls. What Emma's going to talk you through will be building heights and how we're proposing to include them in the PPZ, as well as the strategic development sites overlay. Always reminding us at the end of the day that we're trying to promote a compact mixed-use environment that will not only enhance housing, but also the public realm. And that's something that we know that they sort of go hand in hand. We need a highly livable city, and we certainly need to make it attractive if we want to have more housing. I'm going to hand over to Emma now.
Thanks, Jen. So in the start of reviewing kind of where the provisions were heading in light of what's in the Central Hobart Plan, I suppose some concern has been identified about proceeding with the building height standard with no performance criteria. So this is the map that's in the Central Hobart Plan. It sets the height limits across the precinct area, and Council's office has in the past expressed a lot of support and direction around the building height, the Hobart Building Height Standards Review, and this is where this work comes from. However, as we've moved into kind of drafting planning scheme provisions, there is a concern about having a standard where it sets a maximum limit in an acceptable solution, and there's no ability to vary that through a performance criteria, because anything over the building heights effectively becomes prohibited then. The concern really comes from, I suppose, the work was done in 2018. The economic landscape has changed a fair bit in the last 8 years. And in addition, planning fundamentally is about balancing competing interests. And while the work that was done on the Building Heights Review was an exceptional piece of work, it very much focused on the city's built form in a landscape and didn't balance out the competing considerations around economic growth, social outcomes and that as well. So the concern was effectively raised that the absence of a performance criteria fails to balance those competing interests and may actually undermine development feasibility and key growth outcomes in Central Hobart. So what we have talked about is an approach actually where building height gets separated into two standards in the PPZ. The first standard, which applies to all buildings, the acceptable solution is based off that previous map that you saw on the slide. So that's based off that building height review work, basically as set in the Central Hobart Plan. But we do introduce a performance criteria pathway for where there are demonstrated significant social economic benefits back to the city. And in those circumstances, buildings are also required to demonstrate design excellence and, as Jen has flagged, support public realm improvements. The second height standard that we've been looking at is for buildings over 21 metres in height. And this is, these are buildings that are more prominent within the cityscape and streetscape in the city. And this is a standard which requires them to positively contribute in a design sense back to the city based on an urban context report. The standard is also about ensuring that council has a mechanism to assess shadow and wind impacts, ensuring pedestrian comfort, as well as neighbouring amenity, particularly where sites are near residential zones. So this is the map at the moment of where the building height standards are implemented through. The intention is that this is what forms the basis for the acceptable solution, so it's nice and clear cut. The performance criteria is where we get the opportunity to effectively build in those bonus height or density schemes to allow the development capacity in exchange for delivering benefits back to the city, but also to ensure that, that those coming back are feasible, transparent, and are a really genuine community value. So, I suppose we're working through the detail of the potential performance criteria, but it is an opportunity for council to build in those concepts that it has been talking about separately about bonus density. The real benefits in this approach also is that I suppose it helps to deliver the broader public benefits to the city without council directly having to fund it itself. There's an opportunity to unlock additional housing supply or assist in making development more feasible on a site, particularly where it might deliver more housing supply. And it really does support the implementation of the strategic objectives in the Central Hobart Plan around affordability and density near centres. So we've probably been through that a little bit in the previous slides as well. Yes, this is where the potential for density bonuses, a way to bring in affordable housing opportunities, particularly by making development more feasible. The capacity of any one site to deliver floor area is actually a really significant consideration in whether a development gets off the ground at the moment. So it's giving council some flexibility to respond to those circumstances. What the considerations are in the discretionary pathway, whether it's around affordable housing, public realm and that, we're still working through potential details, but it's something that we want to pose a question to you at the end of this session about specifically. The other aspect of which I suppose has come up through the peer review process is around the major strategic development sites in the city. So this is the map from the Central Hobart Plan that identified some of them. One of the concepts that we've been looking at is actually introducing a strategic development site overlay as part of the PPZ. The purpose is really to identify those strategic sites and ensure that their strategic potential is fulfilled in terms of urban renewal, ensure that I suppose we avoid the risk of fragmented underutilisation of those sites in an ongoing sense, and support obviously the objectives in the Central Hobart Plan, and obviously it also provides kind of clear signals to the investment sector that council is looking for significant strategic developments in the city. What we've been considering is a potential two-pathway framework in the planning scheme provisions. So an acceptable solution where you can progress with minor developments on those sites without doing full site planning, but a performance criteria that once you start doing a major development, you've got a performance criteria that allows you to consider how the overall development fulfills the site's strategic potential. One of the mechanisms that we've been looking at in that is requiring the application to be accompanied by a site development plan, which provides for an overall long-term vision on that site. So much more grounded to the site itself than what you get in the Central Hobart Plan. And it's very much an opportunity also for the landowner to express where they're seeing development going on this site in the long term. We're also seeing an opportunity in this provision through the performance criteria to effectively provide above and beyond proponent benefits, so above and beyond the other standards, where it's warranted by the long-term planning. Now that could be about additional flexibility around the heritage provisions on a site and other similar standards. So where you do the work in a site development plan, you produce a compelling vision for the site, there's an opportunity here to effectively do a trade-off around some of the ordinary provisions in the planning scheme that benefits the proponent but also delivers overall benefit back to the city as well. Do you want back to you?
Yeah, I can just, and then we can jump back. All right, so as we know, the notice of motion from December was deferred to workshop. And I just wanted to make sure that before we go into our approach, which is mostly looking at how that bulky goods use class can be best set up for the future, we wanted to make sure that it was made clear that existing rights, existing user rights, existing use rights, all of that would remain. And this is very much focused on potential future car yards, not so much the existing ones. We wanted to make sure that the industry is clear, that we don't, we're not impinging on anyone's existing rights in that space. And I think it's, and Emma will talk to what our proposed approach is, but certainly blanket bans, prohibition, that's not something that we are entertaining, particularly now that we've been analysing not only where the future is going with car yards, but understanding the objectives of the PPZ itself. The site development overlay map, so that those major strategic sites that we're identifying, we're hoping that that will work hand in hand with the proposed use standards that we're developing. So for bulky goods, what we are proposing is a standalone use class. And we recognise that bulky goods as a use, we can't really, we don't have the ability to break that down into further different types of uses. But bulky goods has many, many different layers to it and many different types of businesses that fall under bulky goods. So we're certainly not wanting to prohibit those. I'll go to the next slide and I'll get Emma to sort of talk us through what we're proposing here.
Sure, thanks, Jen. So as Jen mentioned, bulky goods, it's an established use class in the Tasmanian planning scheme that we need to work to. It includes quite a varied type of activities. So council has a lot of bulky goods already in the city centre. It's not just open car yards. There's trade supply outlets. There's furniture stores, medical supplies. There's a whole range of bulky goods in the city. So what we're proposing is, again, ensuring that there's an acceptable solution of performance criteria. The acceptable solution is aimed at focusing it in the innovation, Trinity Hill and Rivulet precincts, sets a floor area limitation, doesn't require any outdoor display of goods, and must be fully contained within a building and with an active shop front required to the street. There are a lot of bulky goods that already do that. The performance criteria is focused on, I suppose, a discretion that gives council the ability to consider how the bulky goods support Central Hobart's role as expressed in the Central Hobart Plan, how well that use is integrated into the surrounding area, I suppose the layout of the use, so there's an element of how the relationship of that use to delivering a activated pedestrian orientated environment, and ensuring that some of the parking, loading and servicing and that's kept to kind of behind the site and that as well. It's also an ability for council to consider kind of, the long-term evolution, noting that, as expressed in some of the deputations, it is much better for the city to have a site that is occupied and being used rather than vacant. You would have all seen the BYD going to the Motors building recently, and obviously that is a better outcome for the city to have something in there and being used rather than that site vacant. So it isn't, I suppose what we're trying to say is it isn't a clear-cut situation of being from a planning perspective of saying there should be a straight-out prohibition. It's about saying, okay, there'll be an acceptable solution, and in some some of the like car yards and that through to a discretionary pathway, but that gives council the ability to consider it on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, so what we wanted to do, and we appreciate you holding your questions till now. So we have 2 primary questions that we would like to discuss, actually have a workshop. So this is sort of what we'd like to leave today with at least an understanding of what your thoughts are about whether or not we can actually have that performance criteria for building heights. And then of course, and whether you are supportive of looking at that, having that a standalone definition in the PPZ for bulky goods. But yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. Look, I think I was going down the same line of managing this as the chair into 2 sort of separate questions because I think they're quite distinct things to talk about.
They are.
So
yeah.
why don't we do a first round of questions and discussion based on building heights and then a second set on bulky goods?
Okay, I'll start
I'll
on
do it,
building
Zuko.
heights. Can we go back to the plan that you had of this city? Keep on going back.
Do I find it there? That's all right.
No. Yeah, that's it there. This is what frustrates me. This is my frustration. Trinity Hill precinct, that's correct, that's it, 45 metres?
No. No, sorry. The
45 metre zone there, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a 45
that's
metre
the
zone.
innovation precinct, sorry.
Okay, innovation precinct,
So
right?
that blue there is the
Okay.
innovation.
But that's 45 metres, is that one there?
Yes. Yes.
And all around that 45 metres, you've got 60 metres.
Well, that was what was established during the building heights review.
And this is, don't get me wrong, this is what I sit back and go, we've got a corner site, which is the Melville Street, Argyle Street site, which has got 45 metres, and right round it's got 60 metres. This is where, and again, it's going to go back to the question of the breaking it into 2 and density and all that. In 2018, I put forward a motion that looked at exactly what you're saying. What? So has someone read that motion that the council thing finally, 8 years later?
We've certainly taken on board your feedback, Marty. Yeah.
It's taken 8 years to get to here. Okay. I'll just leave it for the moment because I'd rather sum it up in my debate, but I'm just... Oh, another question. It was stated about vacant land and empty parcels like the BYD, that was going to be a housing development, correct?
Yeah.
Fell through, correct? And the discussion's been about economic reality, the economics of the CBD. Do we understand, or someone can answer to me, the economic reality of investment and investors wanting to invest in a property rather than trying to determine what a property should be and then precluding investment on a property because the council determined you can only put a matchstick on it?
Well, we have done an analysis of whether, broadly, of the economic impacts of the Central Hobart Plan, and the outcome of that was that the planning scheme, as encapsulated in the Central Hobart Plan, would not impact on feasibility, wouldn't necessarily make it better, but that was before the work that Emma and Jen have been looking at, and that's why our view is that it would be better to relax things a little bit and be mindful that we need to be
2 more
realistic.
questions. In all this, you're talking about the preclusion of having open car yards, but have we given consideration to future potential air rights?
Well, I think that's part of the intent, is that we want to see the highest and best use of all the land, And we appreciate that there is well-established businesses, and we're not talking about taking away their rights, but we're certainly wanting future businesses to be considering all of that space above their land to avoid that broad acre open lot outcome.
What if there's going to be a broad acre open lot of a car yard, but above it has got affordable housing and mixed use?
That's great.
Well, maybe the performance criteria should be looked at in the way you've worded it, because you can take that and someone could argue otherwise, right?
Yeah, so that was the summary of it.
Well,
so that's not the specific. And I definitely agree with you. Like, the wording has to be looked at closely.
Yeah.
And we want to maximise what happens above it, because that adds to the activity and livability of the city.
Well, I've only had a very quick look at that wording, very quick look at that wording,
Yeah.
and I already put it in my head that two planners could be arguing either way on the way it's worded.
Yeah. That is
And
definitely
I'm
not
not
the
a planner.
performance. That's a plain English summary of it. That is not the performance criteria. We wanted to keep it less technical in terms of the actual drafting, and they'll come back at a later point.
Yeah, so
for
the
you to
actual,
look at.
so we have, so we're drafting it up as we speak, but we wanted to have it more as a conversation today. But no, we need to make sure, and we certainly want this planning scheme amendment to be easily understood. And so you will see the actual planning scheme as it's drafted shortly, once we get there.
My suggestion is go and speak to all our property owners and investors and listen to what they've got to say, because they're the people who've got the money on the ground. Anyway, I'll shut up.
Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Chair. My question's around the strategic development site overlays and whether it corresponds with any of the approved developments that are sitting, not commenced, that would commence if there was additional performance-based height.
It's a good question. So at the moment, this is what was in the Central Hobart Plan. We've sort of moving past how it is at the moment, and it will be at sort of a higher level, block by block, where there is that potential. But certainly, if someone has an active planning permit, they could have it They
can now have up to 8 years to actually substantially commence.
Yeah.
So
they can amend it.
I'm not expecting anybody will be worse off when these come into effect.
But they could put in a new application.
That's what I'm getting at.
Development potentially, if it through this pathway.
Well, we've got the ugly conservatorium sitting there vacant, and it's going to look terrible for quite a few years, I think. The welcome stranger, it looks like a dog. That may have got up if we could allow, but I'm not saying push it through. But and then you've got the one up the hill from the welcome stranger with the car lift. The Masons Lodge between the conservatorium and the one on the corner, and then the North Hobart site. That's only just been approved in the last, 6 months or so.
Which North Hobart one?
The old Wynn.
Newtown,
sorry.
Newtown
Newtown
Road.
Road.
That site.
But that site's part of the North Hobart neighbourhood.
Yeah, okay, so that's out of this completely? Yep.
That one is, but no, you're right. They certainly would be welcoming those conversations.
So I'm supportive of this. First question. Can you put the first question back up so I know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Building heights.
Building heights, yep. And what's the specific question?
It's about understanding if you wish us to proceed, to keep looking at this and presenting you with an option for performance criteria for building height.
The second part of this is we did a lot of work on the building heights in Hobart over quite a few years. And we established that there were certain vistas, view corridors that we were really keen to protect. How would this impact on some of those corridors, those view corridors? Would we still maintain those?
Yeah, so the
or
ones...
we have to stand on our tippy toes,
the ones that are in the planning scheme already, we're looking to protect those, and there's just, I think, 4 key views, and it really is that experience of Kamani, and that main view corridor would still be expected to be protected. But we're not looking to expand there. I think in the plan there was a suggestion to put more view corridors, but we're keen to keep them as the ones that have already been identified.
Okay, and finally, the colour chart, earlier that was where additional height could be achieved, not existing.
The height, the proposed height map, is that, so the proposed height map is in the Central Hobart plan. We brought some here today, and that height map has been refined over the last year in conjunction with analysis that's been done with Lee Woolley and the urban design team.
So they're the
Acceptable heights.
in the new
In the
current?
no, in the proposed. So
In
at the
the
moment, there
proposed.
isn't, there is zone height controls, but there isn't maximum heights.
Okay, because it'd be handy to put the acceptable solution next to the performance criteria heights.
It unfortunately doesn't quite match because, like Jen said, the current height limits are zone-based, which are spatially very different from that layout. Generally, those permitted height limits are either the same or greater than what is allowed under the current zoning. So the acceptable solution doesn't reduce anything that people can do.
It's just a bonus if they can meet some stringent performance criteria in certain locations.
Yeah.
That's what
So we're thinking, for example, up on the Argyle-Campbell Street corridor, where it's proposed to be 18 metres. If you have a performance criteria, that might allow a proponent to deliver, for example, additional floor area to make a residential development viable if it also adopts design excellence, delivers public realm improvements and that as well.
Okay, but the upper limit there'd still be an upper limit on the performance.
Not
a numerical limit.
Not a numerical limit, but the extra height doesn't always mean extra feasibility. You get up to a certain height, you need to double your lift wells.
Okay.
You get to a point where, and we know from all the, we've done a lot of economic analysis on the Central Hobart plan, and we have some huge underutilised blocks, and as you've seen, even mentioned today, it's that ability to deliver and get these built that is some of the issues. So we're trying to make it as open for business as we can, but making sure that the criteria is respectful of the city, and you still have all of the other development controls coming that will be accompanying it, including those protected view corridors.
Yeah, sure. Okay. No, I'm in.
Deputy Lord Mayor. Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for that. That was really great. It feels really exciting. I think Mr. Brown, he said, what was one of his statements just regarding our plans, that it's not about prohibition, it's about collaboration. And you earlier pointed out planning is about balancing competing interests. And I think this is what this actually does. Before we had so many limits on heights depending on the zone, and now what you're actually attempting to do is collaborate and merge those competing interests, which I think is really quite great if you look at it from that holistic perspective. And what it's trying to do, and I understand what Alderman Zuko was saying, but I think what you're highlighting is that you're actually taking account of that and moving it towards so that proponents as well, so the economic benefit as well as the community interest, both of those marry together.
We think so, and in subsequent presentations we'll take you through the classes, the use classes, and how we're looking to establish them per precinct, but we're certainly we're doing our best to pull back from any prohibition.
Yeah, so I think if, with reference to answering the first question, I'm very supportive of this. I think it actually provides for more flexibility. It provides for more opportunity for proponents or developers to go, okay, say it's a 65 metre limit, but hey, mine's 68, and then we look at it on a case-by-case basis as opposed to it just solidly being a no because it's out of the height limit. So I think that's really wonderful. It's flexible. I do like the fact that you've said there's going to be flexibility on heritage. There's a trade-off for benefits for proponents and giving back to the city. That's a plus. There's another bit that you talked about, that vision for the site itself, and so that long term. I suppose I'm wondering what's the definition of long term? Are we saying is it 5 years? Are we saying is it 10 years?
I suppose that's the level of detail we're still kind of
Yeah.
working through. There's a little bit of work to go into the drafting of the provisions. But interestingly, the old Sullivan's Cove planning scheme had a similar key site provision. And when that first came in, that really activated some of those major redevelopment sites back in the second half of the 90s and early 2000s. The provision became pretty much redundant by probably about 2008, 2009 once those sites had been developed. But it had been very helpful in that context. So I suppose we're looking at lessons from that as well as other jurisdictions to see that the time frame aspect.
Yeah, and I think if we look at the example that was given before when you were going through it, okay, look, this has got 45 metres and then around it it's got 60. If we're looking at it on that performance-based criterion and we talk about planning and is it within that scope, it looks like it would actually benefit proponents and developers if taking that into account. I like the flexibility that you're intending on proposing as well around floor space and discretions as well. So in answer to your question, I think it's actually a positive. I think what you're trying to do is, like you said, from 8 years ago when we started it in 2018, we're actually evolving. And evolution is very different to revolution. So I think you're evolving with the city and these changes and also in line with that. So thank you for your work and yes, in answer to your question, for the first one, I'm in support.
Councillor Posselt, then Councillor Kelly.
Thanks. First question, I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it's in Melbourne. There's a planning scheme or a zone that allows for social inclusion or social outcomes to be included in assessment. Are you familiar with that?
So they have a particular purpose. They have a capital city zone.
Yep.
It's very detailed. So are you talking about inclusionary zoning, or are you talking about
beyond community zoning? And I'll try and find it. I do think it is Melbourne that's got it, but it's around looking at beyond just the built form for planning in general. It's about looking at the social outcomes that a development delivers and assessing it with, I guess, a more ethereal approach rather than a strict built form approach.
When you say social, can you?
Like social housing, mixed use stuff, medical stuff. I don't know enough about it. I'm not a planner. I just know of the concept. I will try and find it while we're chatting and do it to you. But I guess this is a bit of a step in that direction, which I really welcome. So, I mean, I think the one of the things that you pointed out, Jenny, in your presentation, is that the Central Hobart Precincts Plan and the Sightlines legally project, their relevancy is still there because it's about how the city sits in its environment, but they're not contextualised to economic and social challenges that we face right now, almost 10 years on. And very, very little construction has started post-COVID here, which is a massive issue for the city. So the long and the short of it is wholly support what you're applying here. I think that if there's a way that we can build in some of those social parameters into how we assess that. So is it that they get extra height when they go to UDAP? Is it they get extra height when it's a mixed use project? Is it extra height when they've got some social inclusionary zoning? How we set those parameters
so
and what we value and what we don't.
Yeah, we haven't gone into it in a lot of detail, but for instance, we have a very clear map in the Central Hobart Plan where we want laneways and where we want those active frontages and secondary frontages. So all of those sorts of concerns would have to be met, particularly around, and there's also, we have set out where we would like or need more open space, because the city actually doesn't have a lot of easily accessible open space. And that's all stepped out in the Central Hobart Plan. So those sorts of things would be the social benefits that would be, they're the ones that we've identified that are most needed. Yeah,
so if I may, I remember being part of the consultation for Central Hobart Precincts well before I was an elected member, just as a community member. And it was quite comprehensive, the work that has gone into this. So what we've done is elicit what's important to the community within the Central Hobart Precincts Plan, and you're looking to lean into what's important to the community to deliver extra height and what the community want. in City projects? Try and summarise.
And if I could just manage expectations a little bit, I think we're all familiar with development applications where we're at 1 centimetre outside the lead woolly height, and then we sort of get bombarded with a certain type of representation posed. So we may see that happen again if we do go with this discretionary approach. But from our perspective, we do think it's worthwhile doing, and we did look at whether or not this would be restricted to something like affordable housing, but we think it's better to provide that broader flexibility.
Yep.
More housing is more housing,
Yep.
And that will hopefully lead to more affordable housing elsewhere in the city.
Yeah, so all things sounds very well considered. As always, strong supporter of what you're proposing. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Look, any clarity we can give developers, the better it is. I mean, people who want to put the money up front, typically, it's even distill it down to someone building a house, you know, it's, a lot of it's driven by emotion and, you know, will I, won't I, and it just takes sometimes something very small for a developer to go, no, bugger it, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to move on to another council site, whatever it is. So the simplicity, as Zuko was saying, I think is key here. I mean, we could probably pile about 50 documents on this table of how this has been evolving over the last 20, 30 years. And, you know, as someone who wants to invest in the city, we just need that total clarity. This is complex. It's super, super complex. I'll give you an example of we might get the right height and have all of the formulas and reasons and step backs we want for that. But if you've got a vacant block, and I know one down the road, and behind that you've got a 10-storey concrete car park. And this is, I'm just highlighting how complex this can be, you know, and the height limit's five levels. Yet, could it not be that you allow a beautiful glass timber CLT building to go to that height to hide that thing? And so I get that, and that's an example of how complex it can be. But we've got to be careful. We're not going to be try not to be all things to all people here. And sometimes the market forces, sure, we don't want ugly buildings and all that, but it's a fine line between market forces and regulation. But look, I note that you said that this is just to progress with this thinking, and we're not making any decisions here nor in the future. So I'm confident with, let's keep the conversation going, but consultation to the people who are going to be investing in here is absolutely paramount to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. If I may, Chair, can I respond?
Yes.
When I first became involved in the Central Hobart Plan, it was described to me as an investment prospectus for the city, and I'm really determined to see that through, because I do think that, yes, it is, planning can be super complex, but we really want to create something clear, manageable, predictable and feasible.
Great, thank you.
We
I've got Alderman Bloomfield.
are we just asking questions at the moment, correct?
We were discussing building heights, and then we were going to move to discussion about the bulky goods in the city.
Are we going to have discussion on the building heights? That's a question.
That's what we're doing now.
This
I
is
thought it was only questions. Okay.
That's okay, I can come back to you.
No, please come back to me.
Alderman Bloomfield.
Look, I'm really glad that this is actually being looked at a little bit more seriously, because I felt it was very prescriptive before with the heights, and I think a lot of the public, not the public, I think the builders knew themselves that infrastructure for accommodation in residential is far more expensive. It has far greater needs than what it does for commercial, and obviously the CBD area is traditionally only really been built for commercial use, so therefore the additional building requirements are far higher. But additionally to that, what I saw from what you presented to date, I think a little bit along the lines of what Councillor Kelly has said, and Alderman Zuko, in the fact that clarity is vital, as in I would want to see built into this, well, if you're able to get a greater height, well, how much? I think anyone who wanted to address this would want to know, am I going to get 10% higher, 20% higher? What should I expect when I do this? Just exactly what are you proposing I could potentially get before we kind of go out too far. And additionally too, some really strong clarity on the types of performance criteria, you know, so that they understand precisely what it is that you're looking for. Because that could also identify if it's prohibitively expensive or not, or perhaps it's something that's very keeping with the area or not, so that you can actually kind of go to town and do your plan and meet it fairly much head on easily.
Yeah, I think
because that's how I see this should go. Because at the moment, everything you've presented is I suppose it is the early stages, isn't it, really? We are in this very, very broad brush drafting section, but I know that if I was looking at doing something, I'd want some really good clarity and knowing so that if I'm going to aim for something and I can get more, I need to be able to judge how much more. Because often what we heard was, we need 1 or 2 extra floors. I want to know, are 1 or 2 extra floors being budgeted here, or is it only really, a couple of metres? Exactly what are we prepared to allow here? We need to really have that in this.
Yeah, I think what would be good is if we're feeling open to the idea of looking at performance criteria, we just bring a few good examples.
That'd be great.
And
so
then we can have a
examples
conversation.
really, really help.
Yeah.
And the same as I said, I'm not saying that we should be saying precisely you will get 2 floors, but I do think a percentage or something like that gives someone a really good understanding of just exactly what they could expect to obtain out of this. Would be fair as well.
Yep, so we'll talk you through the performance criteria that would be applicable and how that will work. Yeah.
That'd be great, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. I've got Harvey and Zuko next for discussion on building heights before we start to go to bulky goods, and then we'll move to questions from the gallery.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Inclusion, I'm just having a look at some examples of inclusionary zoning, which seem to be in a number of the states. Is that something we're looking at where it would be extra heights would need to be mandatory or voluntary for social housing?
Through your chair, we have considered that as a concept. The thinking at the moment from our end is that it would probably be better to provide just general flexibility for greater heights, to provide, for example, housing might be one of the criteria, as opposed to locking that into affordable housing. One of the challenges with affordable housing is that if you create a house and then it goes onto the private market, there's no way of keeping that as affordable.
Mm-hmm.
So really, in a practical sense, affordable housing is provided by community housing providers. So if you're really saying to developers, yeah, you can have more height, but then you have to have a community housing provider managing your part of your property,
Mm-hmm.
that just starts possibly to get a little bit restrictive for some developers, and they might not choose that development, and as opposed to if they could just do more housing, they might think, yep, let's do it.
It'd be interesting to see a couple of examples of what's happened elsewhere and whether it's been successful or not.
Yeah.
Because there's a bit here that says developers are open to it, according to this institute.
I come from working in a council where we had inclusionary zoning at the state level and at the local level, and when it's mandated by the state, it makes things a lot easier, whereas we don't have that here. So that's one hurdle. The second hurdle was actually enforcement and management of it, and we had a lot of places being flipped. So council had full-time solicitors just working on that alone.
Okay, yep.
So there is a problem there with people then flipping them to other uses and short-term accommodation and all sorts of things.
But that'd be handy to know, since there's only six of us here, 7, 6, whatever it is, tonight. And the other thing is, when it comes to additional height and the pressure to go even further, like we have we've had some really ambit claims on height in the city previously.
The speculative proposals.
Yeah. We'd need to be tackling that. This is a rhetorical question, I'm sure, but all those things need to be included.
Well, they'd be discretionary, so they'd have to be passed by council.
Yeah. And we can say no. And also we've got a very strong interest group in Hobart as well, which needs to be brought into the discussion as well, to try and head off a campaign to say no to the changes. That's just a comment.
Alderman Zuko.
Well aware that that's going to be an issue.
First point I want to make is I want to put my protest forward in regards to not asking questions of deputations. I was in this room in a workshop on dogs in South Hobart, and we asked questions of the deputations. Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Thank you for nodding.
I think I chaired that, yep.
Yes, you did.
And we had people there was also questions from the floor.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
I'm just saying
So
that
we
we
can't
questioned the deputations that day. And we also questioned deputations other times, so I want to put that protest forward, but acknowledged by a former chairman. I'd like to sort of expand a little bit. It's sort of talking about, oh, we can't do too much about affordable housing. I'm sorry, we can. There is something called heads of agreement. The Hobart City Council has not got a heads of agreement. It needs to go through legislation to get that heads of agreement. That was part of my motion years ago, because I have spoken to, in the past 15 years, developers from across all spectrums who would be happy to sign a heads of agreement with the Hobart City Council based on being able to get spot rezoning. So we're not looked at spot rezoning. That's why I highlighted that particular site there. That's a particular site where you could say we could go 60 metres at that site. The Welcome Stranger could go to 75 metres, right, because of its demographics where it is. And that's part of the Lee Woolley report. The heads of agreement could be where you make a deal with the developer to say that because of the extra density we're going to provide you, the extra height we're going to provide you, a certain percentage of those developments, not the top level of course, could be in the affordable housing market. And then what we do as part of that heads of agreement in dealing with the state government is we get the state government to develop an affordable housing register so that there are people, the police, the nurses and all that are on this register. And part of that heads of agreement could be that developers could, as part of that sale of some that percentage, could also mean that even if they sell the property, certain percentage must remain on the rental market for a period of time. So if we're going to go down this pathway of wanting to get a city like Melbourne, if we talk about, but let's look at Melbourne because I'll talk car yards in a minute, but let's talk about a place where I really know and I grew up as a kid, Moonee Ponds. There is no more land in Moonee Ponds, but the whole central part of Moonee Ponds now is a mecca of apartments. No one ever envisaged years ago that Moonee Ponds would have these high-rise apartments. It's the only way we're going to be able to get people to live in a central area, the same as the City of Hobart. So if we're going to change the planning scheme, go down the pathway of thinking outside the square. So please, give consideration to my original motion, the heads of agreement, so that we can have the spot rezoning areas that we can say at that spot, on the corner of Harrington and Argyle Street, we can build 60 metres. But you want to build 60 metres, that extra 15 metres, roughly 5 floors, roughly 4.5, 5 floors, that a percentage has got to be down that pathway. And we'll get affordable housing. The developers will look at it and make money because they can say, well, I'm going to buy that, I can go to 60 metres. Spot rezoning is important. And
this will hopefully do the same thing as the spot
but
rezoning.
you haven't spoken about heads of agreement though.
Spot rezoning will take a year or so to actually go through the commission to get a specific zoning. But this
so I think that I suppose what we're trying to do is something that fits within what we can do under the current legislation.
Mm-hmm.
A heads of agreement approach with that spot rezoning, I think, would ultimately require legislative change.
Yeah, it does, yes.
And so I suppose what we're trying to be practical and go, what can we achieve now? Because the government has a fairly dense planning reform agenda with very limited resourcing, and we know the chances of progressing something that doesn't particularly fall within the current government's reform agenda is very difficult. And a planning scheme amendment, I mean, I deal with planning scheme amendments as bread and butter work. Council, I mean, they're approved by the commission. They can be a role, like when you're doing spot rezonings, they are very, very hard to get through the commission. And they're long, like you've got to plan for 12 to 18 months.
Emma, one of the things I've found in my short time I've been on council is you want to get something through, you've got to bring everyone with you, right? If we as a council go to the state government and we're bringing all the developers with us, the money people that can deliver us the housing, it helps us. But if we try and go to the state government and we're not bringing anyone with us, right, that's when they sort of sit there and look at us. I remember going to Parliament one time with a delegation of 20 businesses in Hobart, where the minister at the time did not want to meet the traders of North Hobart, the police minister, but 20 of us were in the chamber where I got one of the opposition party. We got a meeting with the minister that day. You've got to bring people with you. And I'm sorry, this is important to me. I've been working on this for years. If we bring the people with us, we can deliver what this city needs. But what we do sometimes is we decide that we're going to try and do something without speaking to the local people first. So please, speak to them.
Thank you, Zuko.
Zuko, thank you.
Alderman Zuko, apologies. I'd really like to get to questions from the gallery tonight on this very topic. So let's make sure that we get a chance to talk about the bulky goods issue that was been raised. Would you like to pop your question up regarding the bulky goods discussion? And we'll try to get through all the elected members and open up to the gallery before noting that we do have one more item for workshop before moving to close this evening. Who'd like to kick us off? Questions from the gallery after this discussion. Councillor Posselt.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's appropriate that I go first, given part of this is about the car yard motion that I brought. First of all, thank you to the representatives of the industry that have come along, landowners, car yard operators and property developers. It's great that the conversation can be started, which is how I view that motion as a fairly electric way to start a conversation about the future of car yards and the automotive industry within the inner city. I think there is opportunity to work with the federal government and the industry players on their future, as well as facilitating further development within the CBD. My preference is for that to be done collaboratively, as was requested by one of the deputies. So, point two, yes, I'm supportive of managing bulky good uses in the way that is proposed, which is already partly underway.
Through the submods?
Yeah.
The bar at the moment, through the submods on the commercial zone, do have a lot of those objectives in terms of its street presence and not being on the ground floor and things like that. So that is in effect in those some of those big key areas. But yeah, so already if someone wanted to start a car yard Broadacre tomorrow, there is that. That's in effect. So
yeah. So look, I think this is also partly expert-led thing, Chair. Right? I mean, none of us are urban planners or strategic planners, and looking at what other cities do and have done to manage bulky goods sales, which take up large, very, very large floor plates, and also produce a lot of vehicle movements. I think leaning into the evidence from elsewhere and the expert advice on how to manage our city. Certainly I have an idea and a vision for what our city could look like in the future, but it needs to be led by expert advice. So if this is the recommendation to make sure our city is future-proof and make sure that we don't set ourselves up for failure, it's expert aligned and led by what has worked elsewhere, then again, I'm happy to support the officer's suggestions. And again, welcome discussion. Thank the elected members for being involved as it came from the notice of motion. In their discussion, I'm sure there'll be some strong debate, and that's fine. You know, we needed to kick off a discussion, and we've got both building heights and car yards out of this discussion tonight, both two very important topics for our city. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Harvey.
Yes, interesting question. Look, I'm going to go to Moonee Ponds too, Marty.
I'll take you, mate.
Yep. One of those big buildings that got put up overshadowed my backyard, so that was cool. I didn't mind, didn't complain. But it was a central node. But the development there around bulky goods changed over time from really community based or shopping centre based like the market, Moonee Ponds Market, to a franchise area. So happy with that you got the car yards in this equation here, But I'm also concerned about bulky goods. Does that include like big Nike stores, the big box?
Harvey Norman.
Yeah, well, not Harvey Norman, but the other ones that, like
Freedom Furniture.
Yeah,
Anaconda?
all the big
BCF?
ones. Yeah. The ones that are out of Cambridge that might like to be in the city.
They're
Is that not a thing that would occur?
They're all bulky goods.
It's a balance because you've got
Yeah.
Mitre 10 coming back into the
Yeah.
into the city, which is fantastic. So I guess it's horses for courses. How do you get the ones that really benefit us, rather than the ones that are just taking up a lot of space, and then they'll, when economic downturn occurs, they nick off. I don't know. I'm in two minds, and I think it's good to keep service industries in the city. Like I get my cars serviced in the city. It's convenient, but there's other big box things that I would not like to see in the city. The standardised things that every city has. Those brands that I can't even think of because I don't go there.
We are trying not to take a prohibition approach as much as possible, but by having the performance criteria, it's also giving you that potentially that discretion if they can't meet that acceptable solution for whatever reason, then you've got that performance criteria. But
yeah, I mean, in a way, if you have something like an Anaconda and it's in a building, it has a street front, a street presence, you've got parking to the side or to the rear, it still contributes to activity within the city, and they may actually, they may do it's no different than the comparison between a full-scale supermarket and a metro supermarket and things like that. So you can get those businesses and uses happening in a way in a city environment that still fits, and that's really what having a discretionary approach means, that you can consider it on a case by case.
But you can't discriminate against certain businesses. But once upon a time we had diversity, and over time it's been narrowed down to
the market,
chains.
Yeah, the market and the chains, and there was a big furore in Paris because one of those cheap Chinese type brands had come into one of the major Lafayette's places, and the people were in uproar. But the point is that we can't control the market. Plus, we need to be able to stay open to things, but particularly they still have to meet the criteria. But certainly places like Anaconda and those other retail outlets, when they do make city CBD stores, they do it because they want to have that ground floor traffic, but they've got their big box retailers for the kayaks and all the other things, but they will have more clothing perhaps tailored to suit the location. There's swings and roundabouts and balances.
Just thought I'd put that on the table.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey's has hit the nail right on the head. Is Anaconda okay? Is Harvey Norman? Maybe not, but do we like Tesla? Oh yeah, that looks lovely on your big glossy picture up here, doesn't it? And so did the other car dealership, Lexus. Yeah. Oh yeah, tick. But nah, Anaconda. Nah, maybe too hard basket. And definitely not chicken feed. Nah, you can't have them in there. Hey, it highlights the complexity of it, and I just worry we are meddling too much in the whole ebb and flow of how this city has evolved to get where it is today with all this over-regulation. I mentioned the other night moving into North Hobart in 1981, which was pretty down and out. No rules and regulations brought that to where it is today, to its gentrified version. It's through the small business people, it's through people investing in that and listening to all those forces. There was not one building regulation or anything, nothing that's made it to where it is today, as I repeat that again. So, we've got to be careful here, and I really think that we are out of our depth. We really are, as far as we've got to get the best advice, and have we had that already on this whole issue, no doubt, from the Urban Design Advisory Panel of Architects, as they had a big input into all this. Yeah, because I'd like to see that, and you know what? They're the people I put my faith in. Sure, we're concerned about my neighbour having orange fence instead of a nice white picket barn and all that, but I've just seen too many decisions made here and some of the conversations where, sorry, you know, it's to the point of embarrassment, and as well-intentioned people are, we're not qualified. We don't know all of the super detail of heights and shadows and all this sort of thing. And of course, it's complex. I keep saying that. So therefore, we've got to be relying on this expert opinion. And at the end of the day, what are we here for? We're here to be consultants for the community, not consultants, you know, represent the community, should I say. And, you know, I really am worried, but I need the confidence to know that we've got some really high end, as good as, and it's great to have Emma here who represents that end of the industry, but I think it's got to be a bit bigger than that. And, you know, I look forward to seeing what expert opinion I can see instead of us meddling too much in there. And as I say, those examples of those car yards, or no, we shouldn't call them car yards, they're dealerships. You know, this notion of a yard of back in the old day of a car yard out in Newtown there with tumbleweed rolling down the front of it and a bloke leaning up with a cigarette waiting for the next customer. You know, we've evolved from that. The car dealerships, and I'm not going to go down the road of how valuable they are. You know, this glossified slick slides I see there, I don't know, I worry. But hey, give me the confidence and give me the expert opinions and I'll give you an answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, firstly I want to ask the room, how many people around in the 90s when the council made a determination to get rid of dealerships from the residential sector into the central CBD sector?
Living here or?
No, he was here at the time, whether it was a council officer or an elected member. I think Philip Halliday might have been around. Philip, you were around those days, were you, when we did that? Or you came after?
I think after.
The reason why I ask that is the council specifically went down a pathway to get rid of one dealership in particular in South Hobart, in the middle of a residential area, and enticed car yards into a central zone in Hobart. There is a word I didn't like in that presentation, the proliferation of car yards. Anyone would think that they are a detriment to our city. I'm going to ask a question of Bruce in a moment because I wanted to know the dollar factors. How much economic input a dealership has to this city?
That was the wording of the motion.
Well,
that wasn't us.
Well, I didn't say who did it. I said I didn't like that word. Now, we talk about, Councillor Kelly talked about North Hobart. I welcomed him 4 years later. I was there in 77. I was the first of the Mohicans. 13 empty shops in North Hobart when I opened there. It reminded me of Smith Street in Collingwood when I came over here. Did anyone think in 1977 that we could plan what happened in North Hobart? We were going to pull down Salamanca. Did anyone envisage on what has happened in Salamanca? Councillor Kelly talked about Anaconda. There's been talk about Anaconda BCF. You know what? If I had a property and I could entice Anaconda to come into the city, you know the beauty about that is? We'll get a BCF. If I had a property and I could go to Costco, they will be here in 5 years anyway, and say, Costco, here you go, I want you to come to Hobart, but I'm going to give you this rental. I'm just giving you a hypothetical. Do you think Aldi won't jump onto the bandwagon? Is this a central business district, or is this the residential area where we dragged a dealership out of and brought it into the central business district? Look, we've got to accept that cities have to evolve. I talked about for years about shop top development. We have to change the building code. We've never gone down that pathway. Everyone talks about the housing shortage, but we got the welcome stranger there, 2 development applications, right? Because of some heritage issue, it didn't get built, it sits there empty. And you know what? We can drive around Hobart, the amount of empty space there is, but the proliferation of dealerships, that's creating the housing shortage of Hobart has got to be the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of in all my life. If we want to develop and build our city, we need a city that's got bulky goods, a city that's got everything. It doesn't have to be one pristine little aspect, because you know what? The most boring city in this country is Canberra. It is so boring because it's so precise. Let things evolve. Allow a city to develop, because when Myers burnt down, at one stage we were not going to get a Myers. Myers was going to Eastlands. Could you imagine the city of Hobart without a Myers? At one stage the hospital was going to go to the showgrounds. Imagine the city without a hospital. The city we did back then when with Myer and the hospital, an analysis of the economic impact the city would have without the hospital. The devaluation of the rates of those people that are perceived to be the billionaires of Hobart that deliver rates to this city. And think about it, every apartment we have not approved the amount of rates we have lost over that period of time. People don't understand that. It's not just the rates, the economic benefits to the city. I'm sorry, we've got to be very careful how we approach the utopian dream of Hobart.
Alderman Bloomfield.
Hi, the bulky goods issue's been something that's really frustrated me for a long time. When we originally made that decision to make permitted use for churches and childcare and yet make bulky items a discretionary use was really a backward step for me as far as it goes with ensuring what we actually have here in the city. I also think today we're actually focusing on effectively what I think is the wrong question, because we should be focusing on what businesses we do want, because at the moment all we're focusing on is how we can make life difficult for anyone that we perceive as not appropriate. But the really weird thing for me is that bulky items and businesses that sell them are really our cornerstone. Myers actually meets the criteria, by the way, for bulky items when you think about it. And yes, they have everything on level 2, level 3. They sell furniture and all those things. We gave away, what was it, $10 million to make sure they stayed here.
More.
Yeah, and yet here we are going, oh, but we don't really want you, because as soon as you put through a DA to make any changes, so you want to change the sign at the front of Myers, it's going to be a DA, and then you're going to have to go through the discretionary procedure all over again, which is extremely unfortunate and difficult overall. It means places like Officeworks also meet the discretionary issue. JB Hi-Fi also meets the discretionary issue. And both of those shops, I think, place like Officeworks, what do they want to do when they want to expand? You know, they're not going to be able to go up, they're not going to be able to go out, they've already got problems with their parking, and what are they going to do? They'll have to move out. What else are they going to do? We've already lost Spotlight, that decided to move out, and that was definitely a draw card for our city. That took away customers and foot traffic. And yes, while churches might give us foot traffic, so much childcare, but neither of them particularly give us the spend that we need. And as far as we talk about the franchises are a really interesting situation, because franchises happen, we get a concentration of those when our rents get really high. And in particular, so we already have a proliferation of franchises through all the great places like Eastlands and Northgate and places. That squashes out all the little guys who are actually innovative and different. And then the really big ones, the flagship shops, they actually, for the franchises, want to have a place in the CBD. It's why we have the biggest shop of a franchise will be found in the CBD, and the smaller ones will be out in all the different suburbs, because they know the flagship needs to be in the central place where they get the maximum bang for their buck. They pay the highest rent because they can afford it. And this is what we're strangling. Because I really want to question exactly what's going to be left. We can have coffee shops, we can have nail bars, we can have hairdressers. There's not a lot left that's not going to be identifiable as a bulky item. Music shops have bulky items. So do sewing places have bulky items. So do bike shops, in fact, are bulky items. So, you know, what are we going to actually have left if we do this? Because it's not particularly that today this discretionary use will be a problem. It's a discretionary use issue in the next 3 to 5 to 6 to 7 years, when any of these businesses who currently are enjoying the fact that they're there and they're grandfathered in, as soon as they want to make a change, as soon as they want to change a sign or anything else, they're going to face these issues. And I am really concerned that this is just another way of doing exactly that. And then I worry, well, what have we got left? Where are we going to go next? And do we actually want do we actually want a functional city, or are we simply looking at just re-evolving into another suburb? Because it's really looking like a public service city suburb rather than actually a CBD which is functional for business. And they're the concerns that I have with this.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm confused by some of the alarmist comments that have been stated around the table. I think there's been a lot of false equivalency. I think there's been a lot of scaremongering. I think what you've tried to do is actually be a little bit more open to having more businesses of varying degrees and varying sizes and varying capacities and resourcing to allow for that. So the comments around these changes are a point of embarrassment, I don't understand that.
You're going to insult us all, are you, tonight?
Excuse me.
What's going on?
Look, the commentary is remaining respectful around the table, so I'm happy
All
to...
right, you're not giving you too much leash here.
Excuse me.
That wasn't respectful.
This is a debate.
Pull her up.
Councillor Kelly, please
That's
continue,
not
Deputy
respectful
Lord Mayor.
because it's directed at the speakers that spoke before, not at the issue.
Alderman Zuko, I don't need you to explain the concept of respect to me this
Pull her up,
evening.
please.
Excuse me, I'm the chair of the meeting and I would like the Deputy Lord Mayor to continue with her contribution.
What, respectfully or disrespectfully?
Respectfully.
Well, then apologise, please.
What for?
Can we not have cross-table debate, please?
Great. Well, can you allow a respectful debate, please?
I'm happy to accept a respectful debate. Deputy Lord Mayor, would you like to continue your respectful debate, please?
Thank you very much. So I'll just reiterate, I'm a little bit concerned about the alarmist comments that have gone on. It's comments I did not make, it's comments I'm addressing.
You're calling me alarmist, are you?
Alderman Bloomfield, please don't interject. She's allowed to comment on the general nature of the commentary around the table.
No, she's allowed to comment in general, but not on my personal points.
She has not mentioned your name when she has been talking about her comments. Let's move on, please, Deputy.
Thank you. I'd just like to understand, because it was stated that we didn't have any expert opinions on this, changes that you're proposing. Has the Urban Advisory Group...
Well, it would be good to just reiterate,
Yes.
Emma is one of the top planners in Tasmania. She's the National President of the Planning Institute of Australia. We have the expert in the room with us. No, this hasn't been to UDAP yet. We've come to the elected members to get a steer on where we go next, and obviously UDAP will be involved before we finalise the provisions.
They were certainly involved in the preparation of the Central Hobart Plan, from the beginning to just the drafting of where we've landed. But they've been involved every step of the way.
Great. So UDAP has been involved. We have a great qualified expert on planning. So I don't think it's councillors that are meddling. I think you're actually directing us towards something that we need to change. When we're talking about there wasn't a building regulation at a certain time, yeah, okay, that's okay. But cities evolve, laws evolve, things change. And what we're here at the moment is that there's actually a far greater restriction on certain things, such as building heights, such as what we can do with bulky goods. And what you're actually proposing is you're proposing to say, hey, let's collaborate with developers. Hey, let's collaborate to have a little bit more economic growth in the city that actually balances community benefit. And you've provided that to us from your expert advice. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the fact that you're actually trying to move our city forward. So framing it as though this is killing business, or this is restricting business, or this is actually going to somehow only pick and choose certain businesses, I don't understand that. I'm confused by that. Because this is clearly saying, hey, business community, come to the city. This is some of the things we're going to change so it makes it easier for you. We're going to try and take away the building height so it's not just restricted to zones. We're going to have performance criteria that will be set out later from qualified advice. We're trying to... This performance criteria, do we have this right now? We don't, do we? What's this doing when we add this? It's creating options.
The ability for council to consider it. And we can certainly take on board some of the concerns that have been raised, and once we get into the detailed drafting, I think it's the intention is not to be black and white about this. It is to create a pathway for bulky goods uses to be considered on a case-by-case basis. Yes, an acceptable solution. We have to provide some numerical boundaries. That's a drafting requirement. Have we got the right numerical boundaries there? That is definitely something that we can look at going forward. I know there's also a lot of some of the uses that do sell large format goods are technically not falling under the bulky goods use. So, for example, the Myer example, Myer falls under general retail and hire, and that is a no permit required use across the city. So you can have general retail and hire uses that do also sell some bulky goods, but they themselves don't actually fall under the bulky goods use class. So the bulky goods use class are for uses where they are primarily selling the large format stuff, like a furniture store or things like that. So it's a technical nuance, and I really appreciate, for the non-planner, it's really hard to understand that. But we can definitely take the feedback that we've heard around the table today. We don't want to be black and white and restrictive, and work out how we can address those as we move into the detailed drafting.
That's the purpose of a workshop. So,
excuse me, Alderman Zuko, it's not your turn to contribute. That is obviously the purpose of the workshop, but I would actually say that there's been numerous contributions around the table tonight that are more fit for the chamber than a workshop. And I think that the threshold for respect is quite interestingly interpreted by different people at different times as suits them. So let's move to the last contribution, which is Councillor Harvey.
I didn't finish.
Sorry, the Deputy hasn't finished her contribution. Deputy, please finish. We'll move to Councillor Harvey, some questions from the gallery, and then we do need to move on to the last workshopping item of the night, please.
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to say, and from your qualified opinion that you actually told us before, this is part of something that we can do in the planning scheme. It is actually quicker than going through legislation, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're doing something for business. We're doing it, our staff, our qualified staff are going, how can we help business? How can we bring more business into the city? How can we make it easier? How can we make planning easier? This is what we're doing. So to have this whole, oh no, we're doing all these other things, no, that's a false equivalency. It's not fair. It's not right on you guys, and it doesn't represent what you're actually bringing here to the table tonight. What you're bringing is something that's...
critique of what I've said from this person?
Councillor Kelly, the Deputy...
Just comment on the issue.
Councillor Kelly, it's not your turn to contribute. The Deputy Lord Mayor is making generalised comments that is summarising the comments around the table this evening. She has not mentioned any elected members' names in her contribution, and I feel like it's appropriate. Let's move on. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So the draft use standards for acceptable solution, what's the current standards?
It's per zone. Oh, sorry, no, sorry. The bulky goods, we didn't bring the definition.
I don't think it actually has. I think it's automatically discretionary.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a permitted pathway. So we're creating a permitted pathway.
So they're new standards, and we don't have a standard.
No, because it automatically falls into a discretionary use.
Okay.
In most of the zones that we're there's a couple of zones in the current city it's a bit different, but most of it's discretionary.
What we're proposing to do is talk you through each precinct and what uses are currently permissible in that area versus what we're, and generally I think all we've been doing is either moving it to no permit required, permitted, or in some cases discretionary, but as Emma was talking about with general retail and those sorts of commercial, all of those things, we're trying to move it away from being too heavily prescribed.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And the performance criteria, they're all new, which I quite like. This is the first pass. So first time I've heard this, we haven't got anything in our notes that represent this, so this is good.
No, well, and also I think it's worth mentioning this is very much in line with the City of Melbourne's approach to bulky goods in their capital city zone. So this has been well informed by analysis of other cities.
No, okay, no, I appreciate the performance criteria, but just to reiterate, my issue with the bulky goods is the standardisation of cities across Australia. Every single city you go to is exactly the same. So it's about holding on to a uniqueness, and I'd like to think if you expand the opportunity for bulky goods, it might encourage I'm trying not to discriminate against any businesses here, but I'm just trying to reflect that every single shopping centre you go to has the same brands. Every single city you go to has the same brands, and why?
Councillor Harvey, I think the staff have made your point. Let's move on to questions from the gallery. In terms of questions from the gallery, there's obviously a lot of interest in this topic, and I'm really pleased to hear that tonight. Can we make sure that you're not adding a contribution, please, but using the time to ask our expert staff your questions? Just raise your hand if you have a question, please.
Emma, on your draft standards here, you would effectively be banning every car operation in Hobart every month. Because 1,500 square metres, we would have 3 times as much as that, and so would every other dealer in the city. Everybody would have outdoor displays, so it's essentially a prohibition on automotive retailing in Hobart.
That's the acceptable solution only. So there's still the performance criteria pathway. So you know how in the planning scheme, a standard has an acceptable solution and performance criteria. So there are 2 alternative pathways, and you can comply with the planning scheme by relying on one or another. So you can still, it's a bit like, for example, in the urban mixed use zone, the current building heights requirement, I think, is 10 metres, but you can apply to council to go higher because there's a performance criteria. So that's the permitted solution. There's still a discretionary pathway. Have we got the number right there? We definitely, we definitely take on board the information that we've heard tonight, things like that. But it's not a prohibition. It's definitely not saying you can't do it.
But there's no acceptable solution if you put those rules on the table.
Well, very rarely even under the current planning scheme, to open up a broad acre car yard, you wouldn't be falling under an acceptable solution. You'd be looking at performance criteria as it stands.
But what if it wasn't a performance criteria? You essentially ban this.
But we want to have a performance criteria.
Yeah, and generally that's always the case. Yeah.
I'm not sure I get it.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy able to sit down with you.
Well, I think what we're talking about is the nuance of the planning scheme and the definition of acceptable and performance criteria, which requires an entire crash course in planning, which we're not here to do this evening. So let's take another question from the gallery.
Yes, Ellen. 2 things. It's quite hard to hear up here, so it would be lovely if there was some form of audio that broadcast the comments. But some of the councillors' comments have been fantastic, and it's been really good to be able to hear a few more of them, I think. First question I've got is the Tasmanian Planning Commission handed down its decisions and findings for its update to the planning scheme in August of 25. What failed? Why are we talking about all these changes?
Oh, sorry, are you talking about the LPS?
Yeah, so, because that covers part of all of this too, doesn't it?
Okay, so the LPS, what you're talking about is that every local government in Tasmania had to move into the new Tasmanian planning scheme. And so ours took a long time for reasons I don't want to get into, but it was mostly stormwater. So the local provision schedule came into effect. There was 400 pages of analysis from the Commission that included their recommendations for the rest of the work that we needed to do in the city. So we have a local provision schedule in effect, but we're now working through what effectively has been a backlog of planning scheme amendments because we were in that process for so long. So, and this is a part of it to some extent. So we had to wait until the LPS was in effect. It's highly nuanced and complex, but this is one of the major planning scheme amendments we wanted to introduce once we had that in effect. And the Commission have been very clear to us that they wanted to get the LPS in before we could start doing a lot of this work. I hope that sort of explains it.
Yeah. I mean, I thought the state government's direction for councils implementing the Tasmanian planning scheme was to focus largely translating their existing provision, not new strategic changes, hence why this has had to wait.
Adrian, you had a follow-up? You had a follow-up question?
Yeah, yes, could I please?
Yes, yes.
The second question was, in the Hobart City Plan, it talks about population growth of about 300 people a year in the forecast. 300 people a year. With these developments that you speak of, that you're looking to get developers to come into town, has council gone and spoken to large property developers, the Mervacs, the Lendleases, the others involved that would, large property developers, and understood the economics of those developments? And would that, does that appeal? Like, does all of this planning changes that you're putting forward, does that appeal to them to attract developers to come to Hobart? Because, you know, if you want me to change at some point the physical look of the dealership that occupies my land and build residential above it, do the commercial realities stack up? Because if they don't, how can it be built anyway? We don't build to go broke. Have you done that study?
We did an enormous amount of community engagement as part of finalising the Central Hobart Plan, and now that we're in the next phase of implementing that through scheme amendments, we're really just coming to elected members first to get some preliminary feedback before we do any further engagement. I'm expecting that we will have further discussions about the feasibility with property owners.
Developers understand the opportunity is 300 people a year. That's 300 people, not developments. It's probably equivalent to 200 units. Yeah, how do we get them here? Because I was in Cronulla on the weekend, very small part of Sydney, little pocket. There's 20 cranes in the sky. 20.
Look, I appreciate your contribution. We have answered the question. There's many economic forces that affect development in the city, and our experts are certainly aware of them. Do we have any other questions to round up the discussion? No? Excellent. All right. Thank you, everybody. Why don't we take a 2-minute recess and move on to the final workshop item of the night. All right, we've now got a quorum, so we'll commence the presentation for the Mac Point Master Plan briefing. Great.
Everybody knows Anne Beach, so
Hi. So we've got the CEO joining us this evening to do the presentation. Thanks, Anne. Okay, thank you. So just very quickly, conscious that you've probably seen this a million times before, but just before talking about the master plan, just noting that this slide shows a little bit of history. So you can see on the left-hand side the original land that made up part of the site, and then that it was progressively reclaimed over time. But it was originally home to the Merwanina people of the Southeast tribe. This image is one that sort of shows its pretty quick change in use, and this is from the 1970s, showing the very heavy industrial use of the site.
So this included an extra 6.5 hectares of land being reclaimed to put the oil storage on the port site. So here you can see it's significantly dominated by rail, and there is the old gas works in the corner there closest to the city. So in terms of the master plan, just as a bit of quick context, we did do a precinct plan first. So that was informed by 10 weeks of public consultation. The first round of feedback informed the draft, and then we consulted again on the draft plan. And all of those survey responses, written submissions, and similar consultant reports are still on our website for context to then inform the master plan. So this led to the precinct plan, which essentially sets out the key development zones on the site. So to the north, the residential development with a public foreshore, eastern commercial zone on the east alongside the port, and the Aboriginal culturally informed zone to the west on the original land, with the stadium development in the middle. So the master plan essentially is to build on that precinct plan that gives that kind of blueprint but goes into a lot more detail. So the intent is to have urban design principles that inform the development of the site, provide some context to the site so that's all in one place, look at future uses, consider some of the building controls that would be, planning controls, sorry, that would be in place, like heights, building envelopes and similar, and consider impacts on views. So the master plan itself will be actually brought back to council as part of a package to update the planning scheme. So it's an important part of it, but it's not the only part. There are 8 objectives that inform the master plan. So these are all around making sure it's considered as part of the space around it. So complementing, not compete, creating connections and accessible spaces, celebrating and preserving both European and Aboriginal heritage, which came through really strongly in our consultation. Making sure you've got that pedestrianisation, so connections through to the city, and ensuring each zone is successful in its own right and as an integrated piece. There is some significant European heritage on site, as well as Aboriginal heritage, and that includes things like the Royal Engineers building that was built in 1846 to 47 and will hopefully remain for some time. We've just put a fair bit of effort into tidying that up. In the master plan, it just provides some site context, and this is one of the many figures that are in there. So this is illustrating a number of things that are important for us to consider. There's the Hobart rivulet that runs underneath the cenotaph. We were just talking about Maya before, and there's a awkward connection between those two things. There's some heritage on our site itself, and obviously critical heritage around us, but also there's access pathways around the site. Some of the opportunities that are being considered are looking at how to create it, make the site as permeable as possible. So have interactions with the city and the green heart of the Queen's Domain and connecting those spaces together. And that's informed the built form strategy that's then set out in the master plan. So there's the key development zones reflect the same that are in the precinct plan, and we're also remaining conscious of the surrounding port around us in our precinct planning and looking at what they'll be developing on site as well. Connecting with Country framework was developed in the, as it's reflected in the master plan by Teresa Sainty and Zoe Rimmer. So they set out some guiding principles to think about how we can deliver the site and maintain that connection to culture and country. This is just a few images from the master plan that show some of the opportunities to do that, so some of the key locations, and also thinking about key connections and view lines back to the city and across the river. So that's kind of the context that's in there. Quickly, the site master plan itself, it sets out, it goes into more detail. So it's showing the proposed built form of how this would actually come together inside those zones that are already set out. So to the north, the residential development with the public foreshore and enhancing the public access there. Commercial in the pink on the eastern side, making sure there's strong connections through in that blue area, and the orange is the Aboriginal culturally informed zone. The section in the middle that's yellow is the stadium, including the relocated goods shed and the public foreshore that's an activated public space around those. This is illustrating some of the site activations, so opportunities for general use and broader activations. So for example, in the large plaza in the southeast corner is a good place for assembly, although there isn't a screen to watch the World Cup at this point, if someone's going to ask me that question. From the outside, that is. This is just showing the built form strategy, so the actual development areas. So the commercial is in blue here and the residential development in red. The site master plan starts to look at some of the important controls that would inform some of the development on site. So this is showing, it's very small, sorry, but it is showing the site levels across the site. So at the sort of Evan Street end, it's around 3 metres relative level, but as you go up towards the cenotaph, it gets to around 8. So there is a natural sort of increase in height there. And that's important because it then informs the building heights. So on the eastern side there's a consistent height across those development parcels, but it actually results in a difference in the height of the built form that could be developed there because of that different height. So there's 5 stories down in the bottom corner and trying to replicate a similar height to the IXL jam factory across the road and Zero Davy that sort of bookend Evan Street, and maintaining that height so it doesn't increase, noting the existing site levels. So these are just a few renders from the site master plan to give it a bit of context. This is coming in from the northeast corner, where we'll eventually not have a wastewater treatment plant, and you'll be walking through that space and coming into the site. So the stadium here to the right, and the commercial development zone there in that northeast corner straight in front, and an open plaza space that can be activated. And this is it looking down. So there's bus access there for event days, the goods shed that will be activated most days of the week, the development zone there on the side. Then this is coming from the southeast corner. This is the largest open space, I guess, in terms of the concourse as a place of assembly, as a place that can be used on every day, I guess, as a placemaking activation, but also as a key connection of people coming in on an event day. So commercial development there on the right and stadium on the left, and that's this area here, just illustrated in one of the images in the master plan.
Sorry, you got a pointer? You can...
I can go point?
Yeah. Where's your red dot?
Sorry, we don't have a red dot.
Thank
point.
you.
So, let's see how clever I can do this. So this here is Plaza 1 in front of Gate 1 in the stadium, and this is the Eastern Commercial Zone.
So that's a new building?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's standing back here.
Okay, got it
so you
now.
have the stadium to the left and the development here. But this is quite a large space here for that sort of public activation and general use. And this is looking to the north on the public foreshore area, where we'd look to have activation at ground level and then have residential development above that. This is looking down on that, so that image was just down on that foreshore area. The example here that we've used is highlighting that intent to keep it as an accessible, permeable space, so you get that public activation coming through and then not hitting a really solid single development in that space. There's also a few key things that are built into that, and I'll go point because it's quite small. So in the example up at this end, in the far north, this is a slice through of that. So it's showing this public sort of seating and tiered space with the sort of back of the house behind that, and similarly next to that, a front activation with parking behind. But this one's really important so that you can get that public use of the space and open sitting area that's protected, and also helps the annual Royal Hobart Regatta there each year. As part of the master plan, we have a separate document, a housing plan that the Commonwealth Government were keen to have, that just went into a bit more detail. So it's not intended to be part of the statutory package, but it's a bit more context on how the space will work. And one of the things that's included in there is this map, and it was really just showing the connection of this site to the rest of the city, so giving walking and drive time to key things like education, hospital, shopping, groceries, those types of things in terms of its livability. Obviously there's green space already around that space. So in terms of where we're up to, this is an image out of the site master plan that's just flagging. While the site master plan is a really important document, it's not a standalone. So there'll be urban design guidelines that outline how we want to see those developments come together. That will go alongside the planning ordinances, that lovely drafting that informs the planning scheme that will become part of the planning submission that we would make. And just a quick last one, this one is just sort of mapping the process to here. So as I noted at the start, we started with consultation on informing the development of the precinct plan that led to a draft plan. We then consulted on the draft plan that led to the finalised plan that was published in September 2024, and that has all informed the master plan development. So we've tested the work that's in here in a bit more detail, but it is important that there will be further public consultation once we've finished putting together that package. So this is a step in the process, it's not the end of the process. And that's it in a snapshot.
Great. Thanks very much for the presentation. Councillor Harvey, then Alderman Bloomfield.
With the housing development part of this, is there parking on site for that?
Yes.
Can we go back to that,
Yeah.
that render?
Yes.
Not render, that thing there?
So the intent is to have in the car park built into the actual structure itself, but not be publicly visible. So what we want, it's really important that ground floor is an activated space, so you don't feel like you're going to someone's front yard. So having the parking behind those structures and behind those shop fronts and cafes and similar is the intent of that design. So it provides on-site parking, but not to the detriment of the actual presentation.
All right. And second part, is there 24-hour access at the back of the stadium between the goods shed and the escarpment?
So that, I'll just go back to the picture. Yep. Yeah. So do you mean, will the road be open 24 hours or?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so
And
that
is it-
would be a public road, so that would be open all the time. There is an important, just for context to your question, there is an important bit that's not particularly obvious. So this is a really important turnaround point. So for the Northern Access Road, also for bus and similar access, there is a ramp down here that's a controlled access to the back of the stadium. So that's access to the secure zone, which is why it's really important as a turnaround.
So the road around the bottom of the centre tar is you come off the top road there.
Bill, are you talking about here?
Yeah.
Here, and then is that linkage as well?
Okay, they're all pedestrian
Yes,
as well,
but not
24/7.
vehicle. They are designed to for emergency vehicles like fire engines, but they're not. This is all a pedestrian space, so the only road access is from the north and the south.
And under the escarpment there around to
Yeah,
to
I mean, one of our things that we've been making sure is on the table is the inner city cycleway connection and maintaining that accessibility through the precinct. But yeah,
And that's guaranteed or not?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways through. Without making everyone seasick, I'm just going to go back. Sorry, oh, that's where I wanted. So that orange line is that connection for pedestrian and for
Cyclists.
The only thing is we obviously would have some speed limits, so coming down on this eastern side. There is, as I said before, a site change, and you do get that as you kind of develop that space. So there is a ramp and also stairs and lifts. So in case that ramp becomes, it would introduce any accessibility issues. But what that means in the event of separating bicycles from people who might not like being near bicycles, but also when we have emergency services, it gives you that separation opportunity between the two.
Okay. And just finally, can I apologise to the Chair and to Michael for assuming that there were questions able to be asked to representatives? I was incorrect when I said we could ask questions. They weren't representatives when I allowed questions at a previous meeting, so I apologise.
Thank you,
for being
Councillor Harvey. I
incorrect.
think you're referring to deputations.
Deputations,
Yep.
yes. No
Great.
questions of deputations.
Thank
Yes.
you, I'll note that. We had Alderman Bloomfield.
Hi. Okay, with the car park, I know that it was going to be all different iterations and it got taken off the table then put back on. And this particular version now, how many parks is there? It's only a small number, isn't it?
So I think there's a couple of different elements to that. So there's car parking associated particularly with the residential developments. That wouldn't be general public use, they're associated with those developments. In terms of car parking for the precinct development as a whole, this is probably the best picture. So in the order that passed through the Parliament, that included the development of a car park under here. So it's not required.
That was removed.
It hasn't been removed. So that's That's not required for the stadium's operation, but it was included to inform our consideration around construction and if that was most efficient to do at the same time. So we're still looking at that option, and we're also working with Tasports. So Tasports have a really important role here in terms of the connection with the city, and they have a number of commercial developments here that are really important. They obviously own Mach 1 for that sort of people coming from the city, the entrance to the city, but also there's a lot of commercial operations associated with the port that need sort of forward front-facing elements. So we've been working with Tasports because we're conscious they also need car parking available on their site. So what we've been exploring is across this sort of band here, including that car park, is the best way to do the car parking. So is that where we've identified in the north, but without ruling out the other options to make sure we get the best precinct outcome?
So that would be a possible multi-storey being installed there, is that what you're saying?
Potentially, so looking at where that might fit in terms of port operations.
And is there any estimate of how many car parks, how big?
I don't know that off the top of my head, sorry. There is a single sort of a ground level car park here on the port side, and we also have some, so they'd be around 500 car parks. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
Thanks. Just one more question on that car parking. So that would be available for the operational people inside the stadium and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so that would be intended to support day-to-day activation, but also not just in the precinct. So we have people that sort of park in that space and walk into different areas of the city. So that would be a public car park.
I don't know if it's appropriate to ask you this, but I will. The timeline with the actual quote to build the stadium, is there a simple answer to that?
So the agreement between the government and the AFL is end of 2030 is the delivery of the stadium.
No, the quote to build, how much it's going to cost to build it.
Oh,
there's two tenderers in, are there?
Oh, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
So we're still going through that process. So we're currently in stage 1 of the request for tender. So the full procurement process is, the first phase was the expression of interest, and we selected 2 bidders from that to enter the tender. And then the tender has 2 stages. So in this first stage, we have both of those selected parties. Their bids are due in the last week of August. We'll then assess those and then ideally select down to 1. So for the last part of the year, that will give them opportunity to firm up their price and also lock down the local engagement. That came out of our market sounding to do it as a 2-stage, because it means that you then have sort of one party really concentrated in getting that local activation. They're obviously been working really closely with local parties, but it helps lock that in and tries to minimise the risk of variations later.
So there'd be end of August, and then by the end of the year, you would think? Perhaps?
So we'd be hoping to be signing a contract end of the year or early next year, but depending on the decision coming out of stage 1, if we do decide to select down to 1, we'll be able to let everyone know who that party is.
Thank you.
But the contract won't be in place for a few more months.
But that once you know, that will be the price which will be revealed?
Yeah, so if we find, I can't authorise the signing of a contract outside of the budget that we've been given. So if there's any issues with us working within that, we would have to go to government and seek additional funds. I actually can't authorise.
And that could take time and re-looking at plans to save money and all that. That's okay. Yeah, good. Thanks for that.
Councillor Harvey, you had another question?
Oh, okay, great. Yep. Couple of things. Ferry terminal. Is that the little black T? Is there a ferry terminal associated with this?
No, that's already there.
Okay.
Regatta Point is identified in the expansion strategy for the Derwent ferry. But initially, all of our modelling has been based on servicing from the existing terminal for the ferry.
Parking on the Senator.
That's not really a matter for us because it's not our land, but we haven't assumed any parking.
You haven't assumed it? Okay. And the boat ramp, is that still available, and that's further on near the T?
Yeah, it's super important being the only one in Hobart. Sorry if I'm going to make anyone feel sick skipping forward. So what we would look at is potentially having the boat ramp just to maximise that public activation but minimise sort of vehicle-people interactions, is look at having it closer to this end, but there is a commitment to maintain that ramp, and also the jetties, because they both get used, and we actually found that in our consultation that people use it for fishing and launching small vessels and similar, so the maintenance of access to all of those is really important.
And you will undertake to do that?
Yes.
Not personally, but...
Well, I don't know, people usually expect me personally.
Yeah.
But it is, so there is the federal funding agreement that has a few things in it. That's stipulated in the correspondence between the Minister and the Premier that predated the federal funding agreement, that level of detail, so we take that as a requirement.
Okay, and any development on the Governor's land is off the table?
Oh, yeah, no thank you.
Watched the episode last night, hilarious.
Deputy Lord Mayor. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. Just the culturally safe zone. Just wondering, how did the conversations or negotiations go? Because I know I recall there'd been issues previously, and then there wasn't discussions or there wasn't communication. I was just wondering how it went and what was agreed or discussed, and how it will. I see it on there, but I suppose I just want to figure out what's going to be for that space.
The Aboriginal Culturally Informed Zone is a really important part, and I think how we develop that and how we deliver that will need to have a number of conversations with community. There has been some initial discussions including what to call that space, and it's consciously called Aboriginal Culturally Informed Zone as a holding working title, so not to assume the outcome of that space. So we have had some initial feedback and captured some themes from engaging with community. We got CHMA to do that consultation, so they put together a team of Aboriginal people to speak to Aboriginal people, so it was a much more informed consultation. As it's set out in the master plan, it's sort of assuming it will be open space. I think what you're referring to is there are a mixture of views in community, and not everyone supports the idea of a stadium on site. What we are looking to do is to make sure development is culturally informed. So, for example, in the stadium, which I consciously didn't put any pictures of in here, but I wonder if I can find one of the... can sort of see it there. The facade that wraps around the stadium was informed by an idea from feedback from Dean Greeno, who's a Palawa man, and when we were looking at the design, we were sort of seeking his guidance on, this sort of shape and the options, and there's sort of the stingray story that maybe there's a connection with the roof or the hut sort of shape, and maybe that could inform the design and thinking. And his suggestion was to think about the community practice of weaving, as obviously Aboriginal people were displaced from their land, but weaving is a continuing practice. So that idea of weave, you can't quite see the facade in this, but that's why it sort of has this sort of mixed kind of movement. So it's trying to bring that reflection of ongoing practice of weaving. So, I mean, there's small things, and we'll be working with the contractor delivering it to go, what are the opportunities to engage with community, to look at how the space can actually speak to that. But the actual Aboriginal Culture Informed Zone, I'm going to make it on C6, sorry, is, so in terms of sequencing, it's really important we do that so in a way where it can be maintained. The first stage in the precinct plan is delivery of the stadium, and the reason for that is it is a large piece of infrastructure that needs all the lay down space around it. So that will be stage 1, and the Aboriginal Culture Informed Zone is part of stage 2. So once that space is cleared, that can then be developed unencumbered and won't be damaged by further works around it. The other thing I'm just conscious of is that there's other things happening, and we similarly don't want this developed in isolation. So I'm not sure if council's still thinking about opportunities for there to be a keeping place in the domain, and if something like that were to happen, this could be, we'd seek community guidance on could this be a pathway to link those spaces. So we'll need to refresh and touch base then and ask community what they want to see.
Thank you.
Any other contributions or questions? Great, thanks very much for your presentations.
Thank you.
Excellent, thanks.
All right, let's move to questions without notice. Are there any questions this evening? Councillor Foster.
Chair, if I may, can I just make a personal explanation as to why I left the room, please?
Sure.
Thank you. So there's a emergency responder app called Good Sam that appropriately qualified people can sign up to respond to cardiac arrests when they're within a certain walking distance. And at about 5:57 this evening, my alarm went off, which you heard, and I responded to a cardiac arrest in consultation with City of Hobart staff that were on scene. So that was why I was absent and left the room halfway through the meeting, and I felt that I should explain why I rushed out and came back sometime later.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Posselt. Any other questions? All right, I think we can move into the close. Thanks, everybody.